This is a quick video to cover the flight data analysis PowerPoint. I just want to add some context for anyone that wasn't able to join us or for anyone looking for a refresher. So rescoping, I think, is clear. I want to remind you that analog measures include things like altitude, calibrated airspeed, all those accelerations right at the front of the values. Digital measures are predominantly the GPS values, and then in the banking turns, we're looking at all of those things as well. And so a couple of notes here, right? So the first few data points are usually junk. I do want to know who does what sections and who prepares which graphs. So do make sure that you make a page that just explains who did what. So my suggestion for fast and slow taxi work is that this is done kind of together because I want you to compare, for example, the accelerations of the fast and slow taxi, the braking accelerations for those data or those tests. You can also consider the maximum velocity attained at fast taxi and at slow taxi. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's not. Do they travel the same distance? And then I also want you to consider, in addition to integrating accelerations in the longitudinal direction to velocity and integrating velocity to distance, I'd also like you to consider the calibrated airspeed and compare that to the maximum velocity and then explain that. So this gives you some ideas of plotting. And you also have some explanation to do amongst those plots. So I would say because you have fast and slow, at minimum, you've got these 2 plus 3 plus 4 probably plots. Maybe you choose to do it with just the 2 times 2. So you probably have between 4 and 8 plots for this work. Takeoff goes a lot with landing, and I'm actually going to reorder these slides just so they're together. So the takeoff work, we want to review the altimeter data and make sure that it's appropriate. I think the Nashua Airport sits at 212 feet above sea level. On a high pressure day, that's not what the altimeter reads. Consider the GPS altitude and the altimeter and see how they compare and identify takeoff. That would be an interesting plot to show. How do the longitudinal and normal accelerations vary, and what are they doing at the takeoff time? What is the calibrated airspeed doing? Does the takeoff speed match your approximate speed based on longitudinal accelerations? Let's plot the GPS speed with time. How does that compare, and why might it be different? And if you can't explain why, absolutely ask me for more explanation. I would be happy to talk through it with anyone. For landing, it's much the same. You're going to consider GPS altitude and altimeter altitude. You're going to consider those 2 accelerations, what's happening at landing. Consider calibrated airspeed, consider GPS airspeed. For banked turns, I want you to have 3 plots for each turn. We have all accelerations versus time. We have calibrated airspeed and GPS velocity on the same plot versus time, or maybe those are 2 plots if you have trouble getting them on the same plot. And then you have altitude versus time. And the reason for that is, are they level turns? Are they constant velocity turns? Is there anything else that you notice? Where's the roll in and roll out points, and how can you tell? And you should do this for both the left and the right turns. And so things to review is make sure you're watching your units. For example, G's is an inappropriate graph of acceleration. Turn that into feet per second squared. Make sure that everything is compared to similar units. So don't compare feet per second to knots. That would be inappropriate. Graphs need clarity. Give them titles, axes, lines, and legend. Check those lines. They might need legends. The lines, what I mean there is make sure the lines are clearly distinguishable and easy to look at. They're also titled as figures in reports, and so make sure that you give each a figure number and a caption. And I encourage you to include a table of figures in the front of the report. I want to see a draft on Friday, April 3rd. I'd encourage you to start reviewing each other's graphs by this Friday. And I will post a rubric to Brightspace by the end of the day on Friday. So that wraps this video. Questions welcome.